Week 12 is upon us, and look, you're going to have some tough start-sit decisions with so many running backs on bye this week. Let's go through every matchup and figure out who you should start and who you should sit. This week, the Bills, Bengals, Falcons, Jaguars, Saints, and Jets are all off. That means the must-start list is a lot shorter, but these are the running backs you should still feel really good about. Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyren Williams, Derrick Henry, and Christian McCaffrey. Before we talk start-sit, let's talk NFL pick'ems. You want to make sure you lock in your picks on Underdog, and if for some reason you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, well, you get a free pick. In Week 12, it's Jameis Winston on Thursday night, just getting a yard. That's right. Take the higher on 0.5 total yards. That's your free pick'em as a new customer. Just sign up using code ENDGAME, because when you do that as a new customer on Underdog, you get the free pick. Plus, you get up to $1,000 of bonus cash in that Thursday night showdown. You got the Steelers at the Browns. Let's start with Najee Harris, who still is the lead back for sure in Pittsburgh. You feel good about him in this road contest?
Can't feel great about him against the Browns defense, but at the same time, he gets so much volume. He's involved as a pass catcher. He could always score. I'm going to say he's a solid start this week, but he's towards the lower end of the solid starts.
I mean, the volume is still there. Cleveland defense is just okay. Like, not that bad, not that good. I still think I'm going to keep Najee in that solid tier. If you need him, you know he's going to get you the volume. A touchdown is always in play. I just don't feel great about him for any particular reason this week. Don't feel nearly as good about Jaylen Warren because, I don't even know if he's the 1B to Najee. Feels more like kind of like a 1C. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe, but he gets involved a little bit. He does also catch some passes, so I think he's a flex this week, but again, like lower end of the flexes.
Barely a flex is where I'll say, but this week against so many teams are off and really good running backs are out. You might need him, so he's got to at least stay in the flex tier. Now, last week, it looked like Nick Chubb might kind of finally break out, had a really good matchup, and he just still doesn't look like what we remember Nick Chubb looking like. Do you think anything changes?
Against the Steelers, probably not. I'm going to bench Nick Chubb.
If he can't smash in a smash spot now against one of the toughest run defenses out there, you're better off without him. Now, I'd like to say we can't feel better about Jerome Ford, but do you think maybe as a pass catcher, anything?
No, they'd have to be getting just absolutely blown out and throwing the ball a ton, and then even then, I don't think it's going to go to Jerome Ford. No, I'm benching him as well.
Benching him. Look, even if you're desperate, you can find some sort of upside somewhere else, but not against this steel curtain. So the Chiefs go against the Panthers. Doesn't sound like an exciting game on paper, but both backfields might be very interesting this week because the Chiefs could be with Isaiah Pacheco. Has not been confirmed as of yet, but he might be finally back. But is he going to be back in your fantasy lineup if so?
I think he's okay as a flex. I wouldn't rush out to play him. I know it's the Panthers and you want to play him, but remember, he's coming back from a pretty serious leg injury. But I think in this matchup, he can at least be flexed, but he's risky.
Exactly. Don't rush out to throw him back in your starting lineup. If you have two solid running backs, just keep it the way it is. He is playable, but like you said, despite the matchup, I don't feel he gets a ton of volume here. And you have to consider when you're deciding what to do with Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, still there. He's not going to disappear. He's got a ton of volume, maybe not super efficient, but I got to figure he's at least going to have some sort of a role.
Yes, I think he'll still have a role, but not going to be as big as it was. And even with that role, what has he really been giving you? He's been good, but not like elite or anything. So I'm going to say because of the matchup and because I still think Pacheco will be limited, Kareem Hunt also a flex this week.
I know this might be the last week this happens, but right now I feel like it's going to be Pacheco and Hunt pretty evenly split here. Kareem Hunt still does have touchdown upside, but now down to just a flex option. Could we have a similar situation in Carolina? Chuba Hubbard has been great. He got paid, but the rookie might be debuting, so does Chuba Hubbard still belong in that solid or even strong tier?
I'm keeping him in the strong start tier. I know it's the Chiefs. I know it's a tough run defense, but I don't even care. This guy's been so good, and he gets so much volume. He's been good even in tough matchups, and I'm not worried about Jonathan Brooks at all this week. I think Chuba Hubbard's still a strong start.
Not too worried about Brooks. I am a little concerned about the matchup. I know this Chiefs offense isn't nearly the same as it has been, but still, the Carolina Panthers are not dynamic offense by any means. I'll say Chuba's still a solid start. For the most part this week, you're probably still rolling with him as your RB2. And so Jonathan Brooks, as I hinted, is going to play. Dave Canales had said he's going to debut finally, but how much run is he really going to get?
Probably very little. There is no way I'm starting Jonathan Brooks.
We have no idea what to expect here, but I don't expect much. He's someone you can still stash, but don't play. Now, hopefully this video helps you with all your start-sit decisions, but if you still have questions for start-sit, waiver wire trades, or anything fantasy football related, use the Draft Lane app because that connects you directly with Chris and myself for all your fantasy football needs. Download it for free right now. Vikings at the Bears this week. Just when you thought you could trust Aaron Jones, he's the workhorse until he's not, because for some reason Cam Akers got a touchdown and was getting run again. What is going on with Aaron Jones here? Do you think it's the rib that's bothering him?
Aaron Jones has been one of these guys. He's been good in real life. It just hasn't been there for fantasy for him. So, yeah, this is the Bears. I will say one thing about the Bears. The run defense, not that good. The pass defense, good. Run defense, not that good. But I can only put Aaron Jones as a solid start this week.
I do think he'll get better, maybe because he was kind of limited. I'm not going to read too much into last week. I'm not worried about Cam Akers necessarily. And I do feel like Aaron Jones, historically, in his days with the Packers, always owned the Bears. That was a thing. I don't know if it's still a thing. He's a solid start, for the most part. Again, I treat him like an RB2. Now for the Bears, again, first week with a new OC, we saw some good and some bad with DeAndre Swift. The good thing, he scored a long touchdown and looked still pretty efficient, but he didn't get as many carries. Are you worried about Swift's role?
I'm a little worried because we did see a bit more of Rashawn Johnson, but he still had 14 carries, which is a decent amount these days for a running back. So I still, even in this tough matchup against the Vikings run defense, I'm still going to say Swift a solid start, but he's kind of like maybe one notch above Najee Harris.
That's fair. Look, the good thing about DeAndre Swift, he still is involved as a pass catcher. He can always rip off that big run. He still has that explosiveness to him. But man, against the Vikings run defense, it's going to be tough. So I think solid start is as high as I will go. And part of the problem too is he's not getting all that goal line run because Rashawn Johnson continues to play that vulture role. Although he did get 10 carries last week. Does he become fantasy relevant now?
I think so, especially this week with so many buys. I think Rashawn Johnson can be flexed, but just understand he's kind of touchdown or bust here. So risky touchdown dependent flex.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the waiver wire video. Not a whole lot of running backs worth adding right now because nobody's getting hurt. Rashawn Johnson is the one, but I really prefer him in a non-PPR league or a half PPR league because he just doesn't catch many passes. He's not an explosive runner, but he could score a touchdown. He's already done it 5 times, so he is a flex option if you need it this week. Titans at the Texans. Somehow Joe Mixon continues to get better as he's getting older. I still have no explanation for that. But also, we got to wonder about Tony Pollard. He seems to be getting worse as the season goes on. Are you concerned?
I'm getting a little nervous. I know he's been banged up and he's had a couple tough matchups, and this is another tough matchup, but I can never drop Pollard that low. I'm going to keep him in the solid start tier. Again, like of the guys we've talked about so far, I'd probably have Najee at the bottom, Swift ahead of him, and then maybe Pollard above Swift.
I do think things will get better. Here's the thing with Pollard. As mentioned, he's had 2 really tough run defenses to face, and the problem is he gets another one here, a road game against Houston. But he's still a solid start because he's still the guy there. Tyjae Spears cannot stay healthy. He's in the concussion protocol, so he's solid. I just don't feel a big game from him. Lions at the Colts. Got 2 must-start RBs on either side here. And then there's also David Montgomery, who feels like as strong of a start as you can have for a non-must start.
Yeah, I am on the fence with David Montgomery. Not on the fence of starting him. You're definitely starting David Montgomery, but do I want to put him in the strong or solid start tier? I know after last week it's hard not to put him in the strong start tier. And it is the Colts, but they're still not as bad as the Jags. But yeah, he's got touchdown upside. All right, strong start, but lower end of the strong start for me.
I'm going to put him up to the higher end of the strong start tier. I mean, nobody's as bad as the Jaguars, agree with that, but the Colts are not that good at a run defense, and David Montgomery always has touchdown upside. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets 2 again this game. The Lions are just looking so good, so if I have Monty, I'm feeling really good about him in this week, especially when some of those stud running backs are on bye. Patriots at the Dolphins. Let's talk Ramondre Stevenson, still the guy there for New England. I mean, he just feels like he's okay. Is he still even a solid start, or are you going to go lower on him?
No, I got to be solid starts. I mean, he had 20 carries and 4 catches last week. How many running backs are getting that kind of volume? Not a lot. So I know Ramondre is always frustrating because it's the Patriots. Not a lot of chances to score, but the volume is there. He's got to at least be a solid start.
Yeah, I agree that the opportunities are there. Feel like he's getting some run taken away by Drake May's feet. The touchdowns haven't been there, but those come and go. And, Dolphins aren't a great run defense, so yeah, I think solid is fine. Now, Dolphins side, yeah, Achane, you're still going with him. We're not going to talk Raheem Mostert. He's been so bad, and now he's hurt. I already said you can cut him. So maybe Jalen Wright takes advantage of an opportunity here, but do you really trust anyone else in this Dolphins offense?
No, Jalen Wright, what do you have, like 5 carries last week? No, against the Patriots, not starting Jalen Wright.
I'm on the fence about putting him possibly as a flex option, but again, I don't know if the opportunities are really going to be there. Patriots don't have a good run defense, but yeah, this Dolphins backfield has been almost all Achane, so yeah, let's avoid Jalen Wright. Bucks at the Giants, 2 teams coming off of their bye week. Let's start with Bucky Irving in the Bucks backfield. How do you feel about him?
I feel pretty good about him. I'm actually going to put him as a solid start this week in this matchup against the Giants. I know he's not one of these workhorse running backs, but I feel like his efficiency is good enough and his touchdown upside is good enough to put him as a solid start this week.
Yeah, I could be too bullish here. I'm going to go strong start for Bucky Irving. I feel great about him. I mean, he just looks so good. He's one of the leaders in missed tackles forced, one of the leaders in rushing average, over 5 yards per carry. And the Giants defense is not anything that worries me. And it's going to get plenty of opportunity to run the ball. The Bucks have had to play from behind a couple of weeks because they're just so banged up at receiver. At least they'll have Mike Evans back. I really like Bucky Irving this week. And with those running backs who are all missing because of the bye week, I'm going to be really high on Bucky, maybe too high. I'm going to call him a strong start. So where does that leave Rachaad White?
I'm going to also say a solid start here. He has just as much touchdown upside. He catches passes. It's a good matchup for him. I think he's also a solid start.
Yeah, I'll put White in the solid category. Always involved as a pass catcher, touchdown upside. So there you go. Rachaad White might be a guy you need this week. And when we last saw Tyrone Tracy, he was coming off a big game until a very brutal late fumble. How does he recover?
I think he'll recover. This is a good matchup against the Bucks. That run defense hasn't been their strength this year. I don't really know what the strength of that defense has been, to be honest. But what really worries me a little bit about Tracy is his lack of involvement in the passing game. Maybe that will change with Tommy DeVito. So I still think Tracy is a very good start this week. I'm going to still say only a solid start, though, but at the higher end of the solid starts.
It's a little tricky because we don't know exactly how this team will respond after the bye, after the QB switch. I do think they're going to lean a lot on the running game, and Tracy, he's been so good. He's got that explosiveness, and the Bucs defense isn't good, basically on either front. So, man, I'm close to putting him as a strong start, but I'll say he's at least a very solid start. Next, we got the Cowboys at the Commanders. Should have been a really good matchup, but, things change. So this version of the Cowboys, it looks like Rico Dowdle is at least the RB1 for what that's worth, but what is it worth?
Not a whole lot. I mean, Commander's not a tough run defense, even though the defense has gotten better, but still, what is the upside here for Rico Dowdle? Barely a flex if you're desperate.
I think he has to remain at least in the flex tier because he can catch passes. He's getting the opportunities. I don't want to start him, but you might need him, so you can flex him. Now on the other side, you got to feel pretty good about the Commanders running backs going against the Dallas front. Start with Brian Robinson.
I've got him in the solid start tier again. Always has touchdown upside, gets a good amount of volume here. I wish he was more involved as a pass catcher, but the rushing is there and the touchdown upside is there. Solid start.
Well, I'm going to put him in the strong tier. I mean, got to remember last week he was coming off a multi-week injury. He should be a little bit stronger this week. Had that mini bye to recover after the Thursday game. And look, this Dallas defense, I mean, they're just packing it in at this point. I'll tell you what, I really love Brian Robinson in fantasy, and I really love his line on Underdog. If you're doing those pick'ems, 61.5 yards rushing, you got to take that. Go higher than 61.5 yards. You combine it with that free pick if you are new signing up to Underdog. Great chance to win. Just make sure when you sign up for the first time, you use code ENDGAME to get the free picks and your bonus cash. Now, last week, Austin Eckler had himself a pretty nice game. Feels like he's getting a little bit more involved. Do you think that continues?
I don't know if it continues. He caught a ton of passes last week because the Commanders could not get the ball to Terry McLaurin. I don't think that'll be an issue for him this week. Austin Eckler, for me, just always a flex pretty much every single week.
Ironically, the same reason I like B-Rob, I don't like Eckler as much. They won't need to dump it off to him. They'll just be able to run straight down the throat of the Cowboys defense. So Eckler is a flex, mostly for his floor. Now we got the Broncos and the Raiders. Here's where we get to spin the wheel and guess who's going to be the lead running back for Denver this week. Is it Javonte Williams?
It was last week. If it is, this is a good matchup for Javonte Williams. I'll put him in the flex tier because it's the Raiders, but it's very risky.
I'm going to establish a clear pattern here. I don't know if it's going to be Javonte, and I don't want to deal with this anymore. I didn't really like Javonte most of the season anyways. I'm just going to avoid here so I don't worry about, is he going to touch the ball? Is he not? Does it matter? No, I'm avoiding him. Audric Estime, yeah, I'm going to avoid him too.
I'm going to avoid Audric Estime as well. He definitely was not the lead back last week.
And then for the Raiders, look, Alexander Mattison, Zamir White, who was involved last week? Well, it's hard to tell because they both left the game early with injuries. We don't know if they're going to even play. And if they don't, we don't know who's going to be the backup. Is there any Raider running back worth starting in fantasy?
Against the Broncos, no, I'm going to avoid this backfield.
Absolutely. There's nobody that I don't think you can talk me into here. Amir Abdullah, no thanks. 49ers taking on the Packers in Green Bay this week. Look, CMC hasn't looked like vintage CMC, but I still think you got to start him. Now, Josh Jacobs is looking like the best version of Josh Jacobs. Is he a must start?
He's pretty close. He's probably the strongest of the strong starts for me here. I know it's the 49ers, but still, he's been so good. I think you pretty much have to start Josh Jacobs.
Very strong start. Like, this 49ers defense is not what it was last year, and well, neither is the offense, so should be plenty of opportunities to run. I think you pretty much are starting Jacobs this week if you got him. Next is the Cardinals at the Seahawks. Let's talk James Conner. I mean, he's been so good throughout the season. A little less efficient the last couple of weeks, though. You think he's still in that strong tier or a little lower?
Got to be in the strong start tier. I mean, James Conner's never been the most efficient running back anyways, and the Seahawks are not a defense that scares me, so James Conner definitely a strong start.
And, there may be some people who point out the fact that he got fewer carries. Trey Benson's been more involved, but I think Conner, look, he was more involved as a pass catcher last week, even though he got fewer carries. Yeah, you got Conner, you just keep rolling with him. Do you think Trey Benson does get maybe that post-bye bump that rookie running backs sometimes get?
He could, but even if he doesn't, if he gets the usage we saw before the bye, I think that at least makes him a flex start, especially this week with so many teams on bye. Like lower end of the flex starts, but a flex.
Because of so many running backs being off, I will put him as a flex. Still risky because Amari Demercado gets some touches too. But yeah, Benson, I think, has seen a steady increase in his opportunities, so he can be flexed. Now, Kenneth Walker, no longer a must start. He's still got to be a very good start, though.
Kenneth Walker pretty much always feels like a strong start to me, so he's going to be a strong start again.
Strong start. Feel like they might have to go back a little bit more to the running game. You don't want to have to pull out those last-second miracles like they did last week. Any interest in Zach Charbonnet on such a bye-heavy week?
No, I really only have interest if Kenneth Walker is out.
I mean, you need at least somebody with a path. Charbonnet, as long as Walker's there, I just don't see it, so let's avoid. Eagles taking on the Rams in the night game. Yeah, Barkley and Kyron Williams, you're still starting them, so you figure not much to talk about in this game. But what about Blake Corum? He still got a few carries last week, and I think you just might have to go this deep with 6 teams that are off.
I'm not going this deep. I mean, he got like 5 carries. He's like Jalen Wright. I mean, this is desperate of the most desperate. I'm not doing it.
Well, no, if this was a better matchup, but Eagles are one of the toughest run defenses here. Nah, if you have Blake Corum, look somewhere else. And Monday night should be a good one with the Ravens at the Chargers. 2 really good run defenses. So what do you do with the former Raven, J.K. Dobbins?
I think J.K. Dobbins is still a solid start. Again, he's towards the lower end of the solid start, which I know people are going to think is weird coming off that 2-touchdown game. But before his first touchdown, Hassan Haskins got 2 goal line carries, and then his last touchdown was, of course, right at the end of the game there. So there's reasons to be nervous for Dobbins, but still, he gets the volume and he could always score, so he's a solid start.
Yeah, there's plenty going on here. Chargers passing it more. Gus Edwards is back. I have no explanation for the Haskins thing. But Dobbins, I'm done doubting him. He's at least a solid start, even though it's a tough matchup on paper. And then what about Gus Edwards? Looked like he was now going to be in some sort of a timeshare, but took a step back last week.
Yeah, it was really weird because the first half, it was like a lot of Gus Edwards and he was looking really good. He unfortunately did not get any of the goal line carries, which was frustrating. But then in the second half, he kind of disappeared. So I can't start Gus Edwards this week.
It's such a bad matchup. Also, a former Raven, by the way. I think there's still some touchdown upside. So just because of the buys, I'll say he's a flex option, just not a great one. And since we're digging deep, there's always Justice Hill, who, I mean, hey, he's not just backing up Derrick Henry. He actually got 7 targets last week. And that was partly because it was a very tough Pittsburgh run defense. This is a tough Chargers run defense. Does Justice Hill have a role?
He definitely has a role. I think he's one of those guys, only in a PPR league, though, where I would be desperate enough to flex him. Low-end flex, but only in PPR.
Right. He's kind of like the opposite side of the Gus Edwards. Like, hope for a touchdown, only in non-PPR. Justice Hill is hope for a few catches, only in PPR. So, desperation flex. That's everything you need to know about the running backs for Week 12. You want to know about receivers, quarterback, tight end, and everything else to get you ready to win this week. It's all on this week's playlist.